Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Now, this video about flying our dog Buddy. Buds, you okay? Don't even know if you can see him fully on the camera there. He's sat in the front, strapped in. We're going to the beach. The video about taking your dog from Australia, sorry, from the UK to Australia, has been one that's been requested more than any of my videos. And I can understand why, because there is not a lot out there on taking your dog from the UK, for example, to Australia. So I'm going to talk to you about our experience with it, and also, you know, what I think about the whole situation and what you should do. Now, I was thinking about going into specifics about pricing and stuff like that, but I can kind of give you a rough figure off the top of my head from what it was. Right, let's fill you in on the backstory then. So we found our dog in Turkey. So he was a Turkish street dog, and he then stayed in Turkey for a bit, had to get all these jabs to come into the UK, and then we eventually got him to the UK, and he was living with us, you know, happily ever after in our converted bus that we were living in. And then the time came that we were thinking about, you know, we're going to Australia. We always were thinking about it, but we thought, you know, what the hell are we going to do with, but now we've got Buddy. So obviously we thought, well, you know, we're going to have to bring him with us. And a lot of people, I think, thought, ooh, you know, if you're going to Australia, you're going to have to, I don't know what you're going to do with your dog and all this sort of stuff. For me, it was really simple. I was like, well, we're going, so obviously he has to go. It's 2020, it was 2022. I was like, you know, he can go to Australia. It's fine. So I then had to start looking at the process of getting him to Australia. There's a few different options, but there's a few key things you need to think about before you do this. And by the way, as I'm talking, I'm just sort of like freestyling this of what's coming into my head, but I'm going to try and go through it, you know, in an order. So you're thinking about taking your dog to Australia. You need to think about the time scale between, you know, starting this process and when the dog can actually go to Australia, and tie that into when you want to go to Australia. They say you need to kind of leave about 6 to 7 months, it was when we were doing it, from starting the process of the dog going to Australia, so starting all the paperwork, the jabs, to them actually being able to allowed to fly. And that sounds like a long time. The reason why it takes about 6 to 7 months is because the rabies part of the process takes a couple months. Once the dog's jabbed, it has to develop the antibodies, and that process can take a few months. They then have to get tested, and potentially if they've not developed them, then, you know, you have to get them tested again or get another shot of rabies, or, you know. So yeah, you need to look at that 6-7 months from just shut the window. 6-7 months from starting the process to actually the dog being able to fly. The dog also has to have been in a specific country for a certain amount of time. So for us, Buddy, coming from Turkey, that is either not recognised or as a country where a dog can come from to Australia. I don't know why, but they have to be in a country, a specific group of countries in for a certain period of time. And because he was in the UK for more than sort of like 7 months, I think it was, he was fine, eligible to fly. So if your dog was born in the UK, you know, they'll be fine. The main thing that Australia worries about, I think, is rabies. That's a big thing, because rabies is in Europe, you know, and Australia is, I think, rabies free. So that is a big thing that they focus on. So starting off the process then, what you're either going to do is go with a pet shipping company, yeah, or you can do what I did, where I thought, no, it's too expensive, I'm going to have to do most of this myself. Straight away off the bat, I'm going to say, don't do what I did, because you will be worried, and you have to the process is not designed for normal people to be able to do. So you have to live, breathe and sleep that stuff, and you have to keep on top of the changes. There's there's a lot of stuff which you can get tripped up on, and one of the big things is vets in the UK are actually relatively hard to get into at the time we were doing it, because it was post-lockdown. A lot of people had dogs, and a lot of vet spaces were just, there weren't any spaces for vets or dogs to get into vets. So when you do the process, you can't have the same vet for the whole thing. Once a vet has done some jabs or some vaccinations, they aren't allowed to then to do some of the testing, and you have to get different vets to do different things by the sort of like authority that they carry. So there's like government approved vets, official vets, things you wouldn't have even thought about. All this can be eliminated by going with a pet shipping company. Now the prices will have gone up. I think for Buddy, who's a medium-sized dog, we were quoted about £5,000, or there's different packages you can go for. I think the top one was £5,000, plus obviously you're then going to pay the, you're then also going to pay the quarantine fee in Australia, but I'll come on to that. But I did 80% of the process myself. Was it cheaper? Yeah, I think it was cheaper. He didn't need rabies vaccinations because he already had them, and we were able to get him tested to show that he had the antibodies. So there were some things that we saved a bit of money on, and you know, I say I did 80% of it myself. I came to a point where I actually couldn't go any further. The point where I got help or took their services was when he needed to be booked onto a flight. I just couldn't seem to book him onto a flight. I tried, we both tried, and also he needed an animal health certificate and all this sort of stuff, and I was struggling to find vets that would do it. A lot of the vets are quite clueless, not clueless, a lot of the vets don't fully understand the process, to be honest with you, because it's such a lengthy process. And they're not doing it all the time, so why would they know the ins and outs of it? But the pet shipping companies know what needs to be done, and also you have to get your dog jabbed between like a certain amount of days before they fly. There's a very small window of some of the jabs that you have to get before they fly, so it's very hard to juggle by yourself. And if you're working, you've got other things on, and you know, you move to Australia and you're sorting things out, it can be very stressful. So yeah, I would advise paying extra money and going with the pet shipping company. We went with Pet Air, and they were very good. Now let's talk about, so the process, you know, let's say you go through the process, let's say you've picked a pet shipping company, you might not have done, you might be trying to do it yourself. Like I said, it is quite stressful, that's my experience. Let's talk about the dog. Let's talk about leading up to that period of time where the dog has to fly to Australia. So, like I said, the pet shipping company will sort the flights out. Usually if you're from the UK, you'll be flying from you know, one of the main airports in London, Heathrow. And you will also have to book quarantine in Australia. Now, the quarantine, you'll have to book that before they fly. The quarantine facility is in Melbourne. It's a state-of-the-art facility, and it's extremely strict on, you know, what they do and all this sort of stuff. And just an example of how strict Australia is with the jabs and stuff, they changed the requirements whilst we were going through the process, you know, halfway through. So he'd actually had I think he'd had some jabs or something for leptospirosis or something, and then they actually said, oh no, they don't need that anymore or something, because it's already prevalent in the country. And we were like, oh well, we've paid for it anyway now. But that's just another example of how sort of technical this can get if you're going through it by yourself. Anyway, just leading up to the time that they're going to fly, the dog, you will have to book the Australian accommodation, sorry, quarantine. That was for us no, it was 10 days quarantine. 10 days quarantine, I'm almost certain. There's a video on it on our channel of us picking him up from quarantine. Highly advise you go and watch that. But yeah, it has changed. The quarantine now has changed to, I think it's 3 weeks. And I think that's because of a certain outbreak of disease that they are concerned about, and want to make sure that the dogs don't have it. But what that has done now, it will have put pressure on the quarantine spaces, because there's less dogs, you know, going in and out, they're staying for longer. So it will also increase the cost. Now I think the cost for us was around about £1,000. I'm pretty certain it's gone up now because of the increased, you know, stay that they have to do. So you get the quarantine booked, the dog's looking at flying to Australia. Now the worry for a lot of people is, how is my dog going to cope on the flight? How are they going to cope on the flight? Are they going to survive the flight? You know, are they going to be scared? What you need to do, or what I should say, before you even start this process, is they will only fly, well, they'll fly a lot, most dogs, but there are some breeds that they will not fly. And those are dogs that have short snouts, your pugs, your French bulldogs. You know, they're very particular about those sorts of dogs and whether or not they will fly, because of the breathing problems that they experience. There's a lot of police going on today. So that's something you will obviously find out at the early stages. In terms of the dog and getting him on the flight, oh my days. In terms of the dog and getting him on the flight, you go down to, you'll meet your dog, sorry, you'll meet the sort of pet shipping company near the airport. They tend to have offices near the airport, and what they'll do is they'll take the dog off you. They can actually pick the dog up as well if you pay for that service, so they can actually pick the dog up from home. So that's worth knowing, because if you live far away, it's obviously another logistical sort of thing you've got to work out, of getting the dog down there. All these extra things and stuff that they offer, you will have to pay for, but it might depend on the package that you get, whether or not they're included. So we took Buddy down to Heathrow Airport. Obviously we were really sad, worried about him, but I knew, because he was a street dog and that he'd already been on a flight before, may I add, to fly from Turkey to the UK, I knew he'd be okay. And I knew, because we lived in a van with him, he'd be used to the vibrations, the sounds and all that sort of stuff of what he was going to expect. My advice would be, before your dog goes on a flight to Australia, is harden them up. Harden them up. Get them used to going in a crate. Now the crate they will supply if you don't have one, because it has to be a specially approved crate. I was really fortunate, actually. I reached out to someone on TikTok who did pet travel, and they, you know, they quite liked us, fortunately, and we got on well with them, and they supplied a dog crate that was fit for travel. And yeah, we used that. We went to see the pet shipping people. They took Buddy off us, they put him in the back of their van, and they put a towel over him inside the crate. Now that's the sort of thing you should do, I think. I believe this isn't advice. I'm not like someone to give advice about dogs, but for me, if I had a dog different to Buddy that was flying to Australia and I was worried about how he's going to cope with the flight, I would almost simulate the flight in the back of the car. So I would put him in a crate with a towel over it and drive. Get him comfortable to the space that, you know, they have inside a crate. Get him comfortable to the darkness, which will calm them, and get them used to the vibrations and all that sort of stuff. And I wouldn't be sort of talking a lot like, oh, you okay, you okay? I'd try and, you know, wean them off that, so they're comfortable getting into a vehicle, getting into that crate, and the noises and that, they're not going to freak out. That would be what I would do. So when they actually get on the plane, then they actually are kept in the hold where the luggage is. It's climate controlled, so that means that there's heat in there, there's mood light in there. So that's actually where they go. But what happens, or what they told us what will happen, is they actually go onto an aircraft which is being used for pet travel, as well as flying people there and their luggage and all that sort of stuff. They will use this, other dogs that are travelling will board that aircraft. You know, they'll sort of use one aircraft, right, we've got all these dogs travelling on this date, we're actually going to use them on this aircraft. So the chances are they will be flying with other dogs, which I thought was a bit of a bonus there. Do you know what I mean? There's something there, another scent there to, you know, they're not alone. Speaking of scent, what you can also do is put a piece of clothing, small piece of clothing, into the crate with them, which has obviously got your scent on it, which might help them out a little bit. They have also got access to water on the flight, which they fit something to the cage. Now, yeah, they're on the flight, so it's a long flight to Australia. So Buddy's flight was with, I think it was with Singapore Airlines or something, I'm not entirely sure. It's not overly important, to be honest with you, if you're getting a travel company to book it. So he flew from Heathrow and he went to Doha, and Doha is where he had the changeover. So he got offloaded at Doha, and he actually got put into a special part of the airport in Doha, which is for pets, and he got let out into a pen, and he actually got fed as well. So he actually got a hot meal in Doha. And I've just gone into the cross section here of an intersection, so I'm going to roll backwards. So yeah, he got some food at Doha, had time to stretch his legs. They even sent us a photo of him on the journey, which like broke Loz's heart, because he was looking and he was just like really sad. But look, you know, it's a positive sign. He's up, he's walking, he's about. Had some food there if he wanted it, and stretched his legs, and then boarding the second aircraft to Australia. You then get notified by the quarantine facility that the dog's arrived, and it's job done then. It's job, yeah, it's over, isn't it? They've arrived. You don't really hear much from the quarantine facility. You know, no news is good news, to be honest with you, and they are just monitored there. They gradually sort of, I think you get introduced to sort of the warmer temperatures. You don't go really, when you go and collect your dog from the quarantine facility, you don't go in it. They meet you outside. And yeah, you know, all in all, it was a positive experience on our side of things, because nothing went wrong. It was quite straightforward. We got updates along the way. And I think for a total cost, look, I would have to go through my emails and look at receipts and stuff like that, but I was probably looking at about the best part of, it was probably around about £4,000 to take Buddy to Australia. Now I know that's going to be significantly cheaper compared to what people are experiencing right now, especially the bigger your dog, the more expensive it will be, because that's how it works. But yeah, about £4,000. And when you picked him up from the quarantine facility, I will be honest with you, try and rent a car if you can. It's quite there's nothing near that spot in Melbourne where it is, so it would be very beneficial if you had a car to pick your dog up, because we had public transport, and actually we met some people there who were picking up a dog who gave us a lift, thank God. But yeah, that's our experience. Big things to take away, yeah, are prepping your dog, so getting them in the back in the crate, getting them ready with, you know, a towel over that crate, getting them used to the vibrations, but also as well, like I said, the process. It's very hard to do it yourself. I did 80% of it myself, had time to do it myself, but I would seriously consider going with a shipping company, because they will make sure it's done right, and they do this for a lot of dogs. But yeah, Buddy's had no sort of like illnesses coming off that journey. He was fine in quarantine, he did really well, and we're all here now. And guys, we're just about to go to the beach, so if you've got any questions, bang them in the comments. That's my insight about flying a dog to Australia. I've wanted to do this video for a while now, but yeah, hope somebody found it useful, and I will see you on the next video. Take it easy.